welcome back to another episode of Author Interviews with Jazz and Prose. I'm your host, Sai, and today we are here with the lovely Darlene Martin for her book, Forever Love. How are you doing today, Miss Darlene?
I'm doing great. Happy Friday. Happy Good Friday to everyone.
Absolutely. It is Good Friday. It's a blessed Friday.
Yes.
We're so happy to have you here, giving us a little bit of your time, stopping by to talk about this amazing book, Forever Love. So if we want to go ahead, I like to start with asking about the titles and then just kind of the cover inspiration. So if you want to start there.
Okay. Yeah. The cover inspiration is because I love purple. And so I went with purple and white. Just kind of want to be basic, nothing too much. Forever Love is based on of my 35 years of marriage. It's a memoir about my marriage and also family obstacles and the challenges we face in relationships and marriages, period. It takes a lot. And so I wrote the book in order to reach out to people that may want dropping a few gems. It's a short read and dropping a few gems on how we did it and how we inspired each other and was successful as of 35 years. And it's imperfect. Nothing's perfect.
Absolutely. That is definitely an accomplishment. 35 years, especially nowadays, a lot of people just don't stick it through. My parents have been married a long time as well. So yeah, but thank you for definitely giving us this beacon of light of something to look to see that, marriages can work. Okay. And then the other part that says embracing triumphs, marriage, family, and overcoming obstacles. So I'm assuming you guys have been through some stuff, but you're still married. So, yes. So this will be a very good read. Okay, so let's go into just a little bit, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started writing.
Okay, well, first of all, this is my first book, first time author.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, thank you. Well, this is a calling for me. It's been for a long time, and I just decided to be obedient to God. He uses us, of course, through our testimonies and us to bless others. So, and so that's what I had been calling. He'd been calling me to do this for a long time, but I finally retired and finally got the time to actually sit down and do it. So I was inspired by that. I feel like there's not enough relationships that are willing, they just throw in the towel. They're not willing to fight through and do the work that it takes to be in a relationship. So I felt like if I share my story, it could be helpful to someone, whoever it may be, So.
Yeah. Like Iana said, you have to do the work. It does take work. I've been married before and we did get a divorce, but it's a challenge. And I think it's because, you're merging your life with another person. I think it does take a lot of sacrifice and, the two people have to really want it. And then, because you're right, you wrote this and it's kind of reflective for you. It takes vulnerability. Because, I would say, in my community, I never say in our community, a lot of the times, I know my family specifically, like my maternal side of the family, they're very like, don't tell nobody, very secretive kind of. So for you to let other people in to, like you said, God is using you as a testimony, as an example, is I applaud you because I know that it took a lot probably for you to do that. So
yes, thank you. Yeah. That's what we were as a culture, we were taught that sweep everything under the carpet, don't tell your business, but I just, being a Christian and studying the word. That's the type of Christian I am. I study the word. And so all of these years, it taught me to, you can be vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable to share your story. That's God what put me through this so I can come out and share with somebody else that can be blessed by it. So I never really, I found at some point that that's not how we should be as a culture because it doesn't allow us to heal You have to talk about things in order to heal. You could
Yeah.
be a therapist. I talk about therapists in my book. It's not for everyone, but you have to do something in order to heal. But I didn't have to. You're right. You do have to be vulnerable, and not many people can do that. So I had to talk to my husband about it because he wasn't as vulnerable as I was. But it took us both to figure out what was going to be in the book, what was he comfortable with, what was I comfortable with, etc.
Yeah, yeah, because I can imagine it's, as you have to think about like how many details or what do I want to put.
Right.
So yeah, I get that. And even for me as a writer, I struggle with like I think about when I'm writing, I think about how is this going to impact my family, my friends,
Mhm.
like I want
Right.
to put this out, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. And I think is one reason a lot of people go the fiction route because it's kind of hard to distinguish what's true, what's not true, kind of thing.
That would be hard for me because I was thinking about writing another book. If I'm going to write a book, what it's going to be about. But I'm such a I don't know. I have no fake bone in me. It's kind of like everything is real. Everything has to be real. I don't think I can even write fictional books. It'd have to be life story books, nonfiction. When I do something else, I'm not a fiction. I'm
Yeah.
like so not a fiction person. So
Yeah, but to be honest, a lot of the fiction, they say art is based on life. So that's, you probably have the really good fiction books because you like to give the real. So you would probably add a lot of details in there. So,
yeah,
yeah, but I understand it is a different mindset to be in. Like I feel
yeah.
like you're doing nonfiction, it's more conversational versus when it's fiction, more plot and all that kind of stuff. So
Right, right. Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So for this book, Forever Love, just tell us a little bit about what it's about.
Okay, so the book is about what we went through as a family. How it's basically about how we met. I go into detail about that, how we met. And I talk about how, when you're looking for your soulmate or whatever, your spouse, it may not be the person you're looking for. It may be the person that God wants you to have. And because I didn't think he would be, I really didn't. I didn't really wasn't into him like that at first, and all of that, but he grew on me and I started looking on the inside instead of the outside. I'll talk about where we met, how we met. I talk about the baggage we both brought. We brought a lot of baggage, especially me as a woman who was coming out of a relationship prior to that. I had two sons prior to us getting married, and he had one daughter. So that whole, blended family thing. So I speak about that, which is hard and just the baggage you bring as individuals, as what you've gone through, what he went through. My relationship, I brought a lot of baggage, and I think if I could do it all over again, I would have waited a while before I got into another relationships quickly. I think it was kind of quick, but anyways, I talk about that. I talk about the triumphs, how we celebrated each other, how we celebrate our family, but I talk about the infidelity. I share that in there because that happened as well. That's the part that a lot of people have problems with, and there's like, okay, no, no, no. Once that happens, I'm out.
Yeah.
Because I think people are, I don't know. I think a lot of people get on a bandwagon with that or whatever, and that's fine. I'm not saying that's an easy thing because betrayal is hard. It's a hard thing to get through. But I
Yeah.
talk about how we did it through counseling. I was able to own my accountability as well as he did because I had a lot to do with it as well. I was wrong about a lot of things I was doing in a relationship that kind of, threw him into wanting to go out and have another affair with somebody else. So I have to be honest with myself as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I talk about that. And the communication part, I talk about our therapist, how we did go, and a lot of the problems that we were having were because we wasn't communicating effectively. So what he thought I was saying, or how he was interpreted, I was interpreting what he was saying. A lot of times it wasn't even what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot. Okay. So I know couple of things you stated, and I didn't want to assume because I know a lot of the times we talk about infidelity, that is a very, I mean, it's a topic that's never going to go out of style. Like it's from the beginning of time. Like it happens, right? And I think a lot of people do. That's the deal breaker
Yeah.
for a lot of people. And I feel like for some people, it's a blow to the ego.
Yeah.
Because it's like, my light went out, but that's okay. It's a blow to the ego because it's like you cheated on me, like
Mhm.
kind of, But and then also I didn't want to assume because a lot of the times I think people can, when they read your book, they'll kind of look at it in different lights because a lot of the times people always assume that it's the man that cheats, but
Right.
sometimes women cheat
Oh
too,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
so reading the book, it'll get different perspectives, I think, as well. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. What would you say the most challenging part of writing the book was for you?
It was most challenging part was reliving
Mm,
everything. As you write, is therapy as well, but then everything comes back to you. So it's kind of like all these mixed emotions was coming about. And so I had to put the book down and pick it back up and get some opinions from people that I trusted and to read some of what I was writing. And then I was told that, oh my God, you're all over the place, you know. And I know that was because I was in my feelings because the whole it kind of recirculates itself and you start thinking about it. Although I feel like I've been healed, it's still in your mind, you know, and stuff like that. So that was a kind of a hard part, trying to get out my feelings about it.
yeah.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. But I'm sure it was therapeutic
Yes.
as well, writing and getting those feelings out. I think a lot of the times people struggle with getting their feelings out and they're
Mhm.
afraid to feel. Um,
Right.
and definitely I would say, I hate bringing everything back to slavery, but I feel like for African Americans, people in America
Mhm.
that are Black, we have had to mask our emotions a
Yes.
lot.
Yes.
And I think generationally speaking, we're at an age now where people are more comfortable with talking about how they feel. And I think that is a big part of the healing process
Yeah.
because if you keep all that bottled up, of course, you're going to walk around being angry
Right.
because it's bottled up inside. But I
Mhm.
think therapy, you said y'all went to therapy.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Um, can you talk a little bit about the decision to go to therapy? When was the point where you felt like, okay, I think we need therapy?
Well, I've always been a therapist type of person because even with my ex, I went because I've always been a self-reflection person.
Okay.
Um, and that everybody doesn't understand that. I'm my biggest critic. You know, I always evaluate myself. But in this particular case, um, the communication, the non-communication, the way things were going for us, especially with the infidelity, that was the main thing. I
Mhm.
really couldn't handle that, and I knew that we're gonna have to do something, you
Yeah.
know. So that's where that counselor came in at because I knew that was the hardest part for me because the betrayal, your heart is broken, you don't trust the person. It's like, what should I do? I had to have him go, like, okay, we need to split for a minute so I could just get my head wrapped around all of this, you know. So
Yeah.
we both, you know, he was willing to go to therapy, but no doubt that wasn't the first time we had gone, you know, because he knew that if he wanted to work on this and he cared enough about me and wanted to continue our marriage, he didn't have a choice as far as I was concerned, you know.
Yeah.
So that was a deal breaker for me. And then
Yeah.
I
Okay.
touched one of the things in the book too about how therapists, you know, he also did something that was really eye-opening because he was very remorseful about something you'll see in the book. And you know, he went and spoke out in front of a crowd and asked me for his forgiveness, you know. So that was,
Oh,
yeah, and he's not the type that does that at all.
okay. Yeah, and I think that is very important because I know in relationships, I'll speak personally, I don't like looking crazy. Okay. Please don't put me in a position where I feel like, I feel like if I'm in a position, and in the past I've had situations where the person has done something and it made me feel a way because I felt like other people were looking a certain way based on what they did. And I think when something like that happens where you kind of feel a little betrayed, it is important to speak, like to kind of acknowledge your love for me publicly. Of course, you have to be like actually mean it behind the scenes too.
Right.
If it gets to a point where other people are in our business now, yes, you need to do something publicly. Because
and I didn't even know that was surprised to me. I didn't even know that was going to happen because I didn't want him. It was at a church function, and I didn't want him to come. I told him no. He wanted to come join me, and I was like, no, I'm not ready to see you right now. But he popped up anyway, so I didn't even know he was going to do that. But I wanted to say something that you said, that word ego. That's our main. That's everyone's enemy. I think in life in general, that ego is nothing that we should. I mean, I just feel like I read a book. I forgot what the book was about, but it was talking about how how our ego affects us. And the ego is the worst thing that we can have. It's like our enemy. You know what I mean? So, egotistic. I just don't get it. I'm not egotistic. I've never been really. I just feel like this is just who I am. I've always been that way.
It's
that ego really do it for them. They just,
it's, we live in it's a catch-22 kind of time. It's a very blessed time with technology, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of people with social media, it's like the ego thing is like, me, my page, my following. But in a relationship, I feel like not even just in a relationship, in life, I feel like people should think holistically, the bigger picture. This is bigger than me.
Yeah.
God can humble you at any moment.
Oh yeah.
So we can't, like, the ego is crazy because you never know what could happen, tomorrow. So to feel like, for example, if we think about the social media, Instagram models and all that kind of stuff, if you're only thinking like, oh, this person's with me for my looks or whatever like that, the next day something happened to you and you won't look the same. And then what?
Absolutely.
So I feel like we have to think bigger. And I feel like a lot of people, if you're going to get married, I feel like you have to really want it.
You have to, both.
Yeah, both. Not just for the wedding, not just because your family, like, because I don't know, I'm just the type of person where this is my life. Like, this is my life. I don't know. It's very, I know people are kind of on the fence with this, but I can't, it would have to really make sense for me. And because when I was getting divorced, I thought about the kids because we had kids, and I'm like, well, that was a big thing. Well, do I stay for the kids, or I kind of thought about like how, if I stay, how does that affect them? If I leave, how does that affect them? That was a big struggle for me. So were you, because you guys had kids when you were
right. And that was, and that's why I ended up staying with my ex for 9 years, because I shouldn't have never been in that relationship for 9 years. But I did stay for the kids. And I went to a therapist at that time. She was like, don't ever stay for the kids, because basically your kids can sense everything. Whether they're going to probably be more unhappy with the arguing and the disrespect, if there's any, or whatever's going on in the household. They're going to be absorbing that. So she said, you're not doing the children no justice to stick with him because of the kids. So I thought, that makes a lot of sense, So with this marriage, when I married my husband, because the other one was, there was no marriage. It was just a 9-year relationship. But so when I married him, I always kept that thought in my head, I'm never going to do it just for the kids. However, we both took into consideration with, we knew we loved each other. We know we wanted to work on it. We knew we wanted to fight for it. But we did take into consideration our family, because that was important to both of us. My, my parents divorced when I was very young. I was 12, 11 or 12.
Mhm.
And he had a situation too with, not even meeting his dad ever, like I think one time or something. So we were really into trying to keep our family together. So, but that still has to be based on love. It has to be based on we both want to fight for it. It has to be based on some things before it's just staying for the family. But we took the family into consideration for sure. Like right now, we have tons of grandchildren, and stuff like that. So it's like we're Papa, D Mama, and Papa. At this point, that's why we look and we're like, man, we're glad we fought for it, and it's so awesome with that part of it right now. But no, just stand just for the kids, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a very it's a lot of decision making to do. I feel like in a marriage, and then just if you're ever at the part where you have to decide if you're going to stay or leave, it's a lot of things to take into consideration.
Mhm.
Well, do you have a favorite chapter of the book? Like your
Uh, well, I think my favorite chapter, like I was saying, is in the part where he showed remorse and accountability for himself. That's my favorite chapter because that I think was the time I had an awakening, like an aha moment, like, wow, even after he told me all this personally and privately and all that. And when he did that, and I know it was actually out of his character,
yeah,
I thought, wow, he really wants it too, so that
yeah.
was my favorite chapter for me.
Yeah, of course. And I think a lot of the times people will say like, "Oh, fight for your marriage." Do you have examples in there like what does that look like? When people say fight for your marriage, would you say like the therapy was the fighting? Like what would you describe as
Yes. Yeah, the
yes.
therapist was a big part. Because the therapy shows a lot of, that's one thing that I talk to a lot of people about marriage and at giving them advice and stuff. And most of the time, people, especially men, I think they don't like going to therapy. They don't feel like they need therapy, or anybody who doesn't want to hold themselves accountable do not want to go to therapy. I
Yeah.
think that's a huge thing because it makes you look at yourself as well. And I need to think like myself as well, And I'm gonna back up for a minute when I talk about ego. I think there are some times where I let my ego get in the way, at certain points. So
Mhm.
and that was an eye opener for me. So that was definitely fighting for it. We want to know why. We want to know why is he acting that way? Why is she acting that way? Are you doing something to cause that person to act out like this or vice versa? So the
Mhm.
therapy was a very big part, and continuous therapy too. That wasn't just, you know, uh, if anytime I feel like, okay, I want to go to therapy, we go to individual therapy too. Like, I still at times go to individual therapy
Yeah.
because we can only sometimes work on ourselves and how we deal with someone else. We can't make them change about everything, but we can understand and how we deal with them and stuff like that. But we can't make them change. So that's a huge part of because that's the part of communicating. You
Yeah.
know that communication is a big part. And so and like I said, the infidelity part, we really had to go for that and work on that quite a bit. I just had questions, and so the therapist, the one of the therapists we went to I suggest you go to someone that you don't know, not your pastor, not your first lady and wife. We did that too. But once
Mhm.
we went to a church, a Christian therapist. It was a man and a woman. We did not know them. So that was a good thing because they were able to, not take sides or anything like that. And then there was a woman and there's a man, and they told us, you know what? They said, you guys, the way you're talking and we can see you love each other and this and the other, we think you should work on it, because a lot of therapists won't give you that. They won't
Yeah.
give you that. But
Yeah.
and then not all of them are good. Well, I've come across some that aren't good either, because some people say, therapists, they're not. Yeah, sometimes you have therapists that, they don't really know as much as you do, or either. That's why we made sure you have to be specific in who you choose for the therapist or counselor or whatever.
Excuse me, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. because we're all human. So yeah, definitely like therapists are not Jesus, they're not God, they're not perfect. So
Yeah.
definitely is important if you're going to pick a therapist. I highly recommend. I feel like yes, going to marriage counseling or therapy is good, but a lot of the times individual therapy is needed because no matter what side you're on of why you're at there, at this place where you guys can't work things out or whatever, you need other
Right.
help. Looking within to see, well, how am I attracting this, or what am I doing to
Mhm.
accept this, or why did I stay so long? That kind of stuff I feel like can help as well.
Right.
I think standards really play a big part in, how can I say this? Different relationships, because some people grew up in a home where the normal for them was toxic, or some people grew up where, it really depends on what was modeled for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talk about that in the book a little bit too, because we both come from different places for as family. It was just two of us girls,
Mhm.
we were stable, my mom and dad at all the time they were together, and he grew up with 8 boys. And, it's kind of like they moved here and there and around, and he had certain habits or whatever. And then then we were just raised differently. I mean, that in itself is a challenge.
Yeah, I agree. That, and it's, as a person who's divorced, I will say yes. And I got married really young, so I was like, I didn't know anything. I was just young in love. And now I realize that I'm very hesitant with getting married again, because I feel like it takes a lot of sacrifice, number one.
Yeah.
um, and then also like
Compromising.
compromising, yes. And then, like you said, if you're not from like the same kind of background, or it's very, people rarely, especially I'm in my upper third, mid third, and 35, and I feel like once I get to that age, it's kind of harder. A lot of people are in their ways, they're set in their ways. So it takes a lot of, is this person willing to meet in the middle?
Yeah.
And especially living together. Would you recommend a couple living together before they got married? I should have put that on my would you rather. We'll do a pre would you rather.
Well, this is just personally me, I think so.
Yeah.
I couldn't see it any other way.
Yeah.
I mean, because I want to learn something about that person before I marry them. And that's the only way you can really learn about a person, if you're around them 24/7.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do write fiction. Like, one book that I'm working on is a mystery thriller, and it's a lady who had a secret past. And I feel like, yes, when you live with a person, it's very hard, especially if I'm a nosy person. So you can really hide so much from me. Like, I'm a figure. So yeah, I think I don't know. And I know it's a very, people are on the fence with that, especially with
Right.
religion. But it's important to kind of pay attention. I think love can be blinding.
Yes.
A lot of people don't pay attention to things in the beginning, especially if you weren't raised to
Mhm.
look for red flags. I mean, some
Exactly.
of us were just raised to get a provider and just,
Mhm.
you know, so yeah, I think the way you grew up, and I feel like with the way you grew up, I think you have a choice. Either you are going to um, stick with that, or you can use it to learn from.
Right.
It's not always a victim mentality. Well, that's just how I was raised. Well, are you gonna, if it's a negative way, are you gonna continue to do that? I feel like once you
Right.
know better, you should do better, but
Yeah, exactly. That part. Yeah.
yeah, I'll digress. Well, with writing the book, what was your process like? So this is nonfiction. So did you have like an outline? Tell us a little bit about your process from the idea to, okay, let me write it and print it out.
Well, I started just freelance writing. I was just just started writing, freelance writing, everything that came to my mind, just like almost like journaling, although I don't journal. But when I realized I was ready to get serious about writing my book, I started just writing. I knew what it was about, which makes it easier for me. I knew that I tried to come up with pointers that, so as I was writing, I was thinking about my chapters. What could a chapter be? What could the second, third, fourth, fifth and chapter be about? So I just kept writing. So then I would put the book down for a while, and then I say, okay, when I start back, I'm going to start putting a little bit of more things in perspective. So I did a lot of rewriting, changing things and throwing this away, throwing that away. Then I got to the point where I wanted somebody to look at it like, what do you think about this? And that's when I actually had to almost start over, because she was like, oh wow, you're all over the place with this. She says in this chapter, in this page, you're talking about your ex. And then this page, this seems like that belonged to your husband, but you were talking about your ex. So that's when my feelings came into it. And it was, although it was therapy, it was still hard to focus on and keep in perspective what I was writing about. But it only took her to tell me that so I can say, okay, I need to slow down now. I need to get out my feelings, But so that's what I did. And then I later on down the line, I started making my chapters. Then I say, okay, this is the bullets of what my chapters are going to be. So then I started expanding on those chapters, just like that, writing again in the chapter boxes or whatever. And so then things would come to my head. So I would definitely do a lot of putting a book down because, like over writer's cramp or whatever they call it. I had to put the book down many times. So, and then to get through it. So yeah, that was the thing. It was kind of easy since it was about my life, it's like I already knew what I wanted to write, but it's still some things came out. It's like, oh, should I put that in there or shouldn't I? Or, it's fine with me, but let me talk to my husband, because he may not, agree with it. And I have to think about things like, okay, well, can I be sued for this if I put this in there about my ex? So that kind of kept me away from saying a lot of things. What type of book do I want to be? And I feel I didn't want to be a tell-all book, negative book. I didn't want to be all negative and just a tell-all and just to be out there in a gossip type of book. So I knew I wanted a book that was very specific in what I wanted people to know and to get from it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think we do have a responsibility. I believe, I know everybody's different. When we it depends on the purpose of putting your book out, right? But yeah, choosing the tone, like what do I want people to get from this? And I think I love that you talked about reorganizing your writings. I'm a reading teacher, so I teach 8th grade reading, and my students, a lot of them, they don't like reading, they don't like writing. So I tell them all the time, well, just write first. Like a lot of times, like they think, well, I'm just gonna write one draft. I'm like, no, oh my God, that's just the beginning. You got to go back and make sure everything is actually, cohesive and in order, or it's going to confuse the reader, so yeah, I think that a lot of the times for me, I'm working on a new book and I do outlines as well. But I think it's just it does help with the delivery and just the picture, and then so and I think
when you spoke about that's another thing too with I've always loved English. English, reading, writing. And I remember my English 1A I had taken in college, and there was a teacher, she told me, and it stuck with me. She's like, you know what, you could write a book someday. And it stuck with me, although I kept it in the back of my head, like, she's starting to write a book. But then I put that together. I know that was God telling me way back when that, that's what he wanted me to do. But I didn't know at that time. That was before I got married and everything. But she said, your writing is just, she told me my writing was different. She said, you write, you just write with like it flows, you're a writer. And I'm like, oh, okay. But I have always liked writing and English, reading, all of that. And so I've read books too. And I and I always would think, I know I can write a book. This teacher told me one time I could write a book.
I love that. Oh my God. Yes, that's a reminder. I try to remind my students all the time, like as a person who writes and I publish books and things like that. They're like,
Mhm.
oh my God, Miss Sharp, I looked you up on the computer. I'm like, yes, I write. So I tell them all the time, if y'all need help writing your book, because and I'm like, I tell them, if you don't tell your story, somebody else is going to tell it for you. Or,
Right.
we have to control the narrative. It's very important
Right.
that
Yes.
you're
Yes.
your voice out there,
Uh-huh.
So I take my writing very seriously as a teacher. And they're like, oh my God, we recently wrote our last essay. I'm like, you guys are going to be so happy that we're done.
Well, shout out to you for being a teacher. That's awesome. You guys.
Yeah, it's definitely a calling. That's
Yeah.
another calling because I didn't think that I would be. It just kind of fit with my lifestyle a little bit as a
Uh-huh.
mother and everything. And I love reading and writing, obviously. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, I can do this. So
That's great.
yeah. So yeah. As far as publishing, what was that like? Did you feel like when you were printing the books out, how did that process work for you?
Well, um, since I was a first time author, I interviewed some publishers. So I didn't know who I was going to go through. I wasn't sure if I should just try to do it myself. When I thought about that, it became overwhelming to me. So I went through a publisher who I wasn't a good fit for me. But I learned some things from her. she wasn't a good, she was trying to basically write my book for me. I'm like, and tell me this, I shouldn't say this and what I should say. I'm like, wait a minute. But anyways, I ended up going through a company called Book Baby. You have to still, get on the computer and do your manuscript. You have to do the all of the writing and putting your book on the the word counting and all that stuff and everything like that. But they have a point where you tell them what kind of you could do it step by step if you want, but I kind of wanted to get done, so I didn't do it too much step by step. But they do your design, then they have a manual that you go through in order to to put in there what you need to put about your book. So the processing part and all that stuff I did. They did my book cover for me and stuff like that. So I like that. It's a certain, that was my style. That was, something that I can, that's the type of publishing I wanted. It's like a co-publishing thing.
Okay, yeah, that's what it sounds like. I think I've heard of the name once or twice, but it sounds like it's kind of a streamlined process that they kind of guide you through it.
Right. They
Okay.
got through it. Yeah. So that was my style. I don't mind working alone, and I had a lot of skills already, like I said, with writing and things
Yeah.
like that. And I know the computer and stuff, some of the software. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go with this.
Okay. Well, that's nice. I'm gonna have to look into that. I know a lot of people, like you said, it can be overwhelming because I'm the type of person. Do I have one of my books up here that I do everything myself, like literally everything. So
Mm-hmm.
like I do the cover, but I do like sometimes outsource
Yeah.
artwork and all that kind of stuff. But it
Yeah.
is a lot. It
It's
is
a
a
lot.
lot of steps. And if
Mhm.
you don't, because some people are like, look, I just want to write the book. I don't want to do anything else. I just want to write the book, and then y'all
Yeah.
can do. So I think it's definitely a choice to make when you're deciding
Yeah.
when you're ready to get it out.
Right.
Okay. Advice for people who want to write a book. So if you feel like there's a person, if there's a person that's out there who has a book inside of them, what advice would you give them to just get started?
I would just say, like I was saying earlier, just start writing,
Mhm.
start writing and just start freelance writing, just without even thinking too much about it.
Yeah.
What, you have to know what your title is going to be, of course, and what you're writing about.
Yeah.
But just so once you know that, just start freelance writing, get you some tablets or whatever you're going to use to write, and just start writing every day or every few times a week, maybe not every day, but a few times a week, and then go back and look and and check. And I did a lot of research too. I talked to people that was either authors, or I did a lot of Googling.
Yeah. I love this
A lot of Googling, yeah, to get some ideas as well. but so researching and just writing, and until you get to the point where you want to start putting your book in some type of order and making your chapters and bullets and start writing under that. And you're going to go back many times back and forth to change things and just go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never know who you would help from putting this out there. I think, different authors can relate to different people. So I think it's important that if you feel like you have a book in you, just go ahead. I mean, like, literally, what is the worst that could happen?
Right. Yeah. And then the editing part, that was great because that when I hired like I told you, this particular company I went through, it's got co-authoring. So I chose a editor that I wanted through that company, which is great. The editing part can be challenging too, but I had a very good editor. And so, make sure your editor, you get a good editor. There's different types of editors too, but I really like the editor that I got. Some will just proofread for you, but I had them do the proofreading. I'm good at grammar, but sometimes what looks good to me that doesn't mean it looks good to everybody, or that's what it's supposed to be. So the editor will tell you, give you some suggestions and write things out and put things in and so forth.
Yeah, that we had our webinar maybe 3 weeks ago. And one lady on there was like, "Oh my God, the editing and revising part is brutal," which, yeah. And as a teacher, I do not like teaching editing and revising because for me, it's something that comes really natural. Like for me, I know how to do it, but explaining all of the little details is too much.
Right.
So yeah, well, that's good. I'm really gonna have to check out Book Baby. You said it's called, that they have people already set up. I like that's really smart because it sounds like they have everything in one, like
everything in one. And you could do things in like if you say, okay, they do charge,
of course.
So, but you could say, okay, well, I just have the money to get this part and this part done for now. Okay, it's in your account. Then when you get your other part ready, they're waiting on you. Okay, I'm ready for this part now. So I like them. I would definitely go through them probably again if I had to.
Yeah, you need to get a sponsor, girl, because you talking them up. Book Baby, give her a sponsor.
Right? It ain't even get paid for.
Exactly. This is not paid for. This is not paid for. Okay, I feel like we're at our trivia time.
Okay,
so we're gonna go to our trivia. Let me mute this. Okay, so this is Would You Rather. So it's gonna have you pick a number from 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Okay, I'm gonna go with 3.
3. Okay, let me see. I feel like I don't know if that's one of my newer questions. Okay, this is one that everybody always picks 3. I don't know.
Oh, really?
Okay, so would you rather only write at 3 a.m. or with a typewriter?
Not 3 a.m.
Okay, so you're the first person to ever choose typewriter. So not 3 a.m. You're like, okay.
Typewriter.
Okay, typewriter. Yeah, the times when I've done it, I was like, I'm gonna have to do 3 a.m. just because, I've had a typewriter growing up, like my dad had gotten me one, but I need that like I just talked about editing and revising now. I need the Google, the built-in grammar stuff.
Right. Yeah. I'm old school, so I'm back in the day. We had those typewriters. You'd have to pull the thing over yourself.
Yeah.
So I've been there.
Yeah, you like, okay, that's a piece of cake. I need my sleep. Yeah, with the grandbabies, I'm sure, because I have kids and I have little toddlers, and the sleep is very important.
Very important.
Okay, so we're at our closing slide. So what is next for you? Do you have another book in you?
I've been writing some things down just as they come to mind. Those are based on my life too, things I went through. I don't know yet. I mean, like teenage pregnancy, like, being a divorced child, I have so many things that I can just based on my life, write about. So I've just been kind of jotting stuff down and giving myself some time with this book. This book was published in September of last year. So,
Okay.
you know, I'm still kind of giving myself some time on this one. And then people are telling me, well, you should just do a number 2. But I don't feel like that's, you know, I kind of did my memoir, the book about my life in a nutshell, because it is a short read. I just don't feel like it's going to be a book 2 about that. But it may be some things about my life. I'm just still thinking and learning because, like I said, I am a first-time author. Maybe I can learn some things from you.
Absolutely. Listen, we're the webinar. If you haven't watched that, go watch that on YouTube. The webinar was great. It was like over 20 women, and we were just talking about being a writer and what that's like. But there's also, I interviewed author Black Diamond, and she talked about how she took her one book. Now she has like a workbook, but the workbook will be great for you to create a workbook from this. She's also now has like a little seminar panel about what her book topic was about. So I don't know if you haven't already thought about ways to expand topic from your book. Yeah, because especially with this topic is great with marriage, relationships, and just, you know, because it's always going to be needed because marriage is a work in progress. It's just you got to work on it every day. So yeah, even if you don't write another book right now, because I'm like that too. Like I have to be moved to write a book. I can't. It's probably what is it called? A resolution for me to sit down and be diligent, but I have to be moved to write.
That's it right there.
I can't just write now. So, for your book, Forever Love, tell us where we can find it.
Okay. Let's see. It's on Amazon for sure. Book, I think it's store.bookbaby.com. It's also on there. And also, I haven't been putting out Barnes and Nobles a lot. I don't think that's something I didn't, put out a lot. So, but it is there. It should be at Barnes and Nobles, but more people have been buying it on Amazon. But I also have done a lot of orders just because I've been selling a lot of books on my own too, just advertising and giving them an option to go there. Either I have some on hand, so my email is Darlene M622@gmail.com. So if you're interested, I can send one as well. Actually, that'll get you outside of some of those fees for shipping, because I just charge a flat fee for shipping. It's a low fee. It's not like what
absolutely. It's always better to buy directly from the author if possible, for sure. Also, last thing I'll leave you with a little tip is I don't know if you've thought about getting your book in the libraries, because you can. What state are you in?
California.
Okay, yeah. So usually libraries, they have, like, if you go to their website, you can at the bottom it will be like submit a purchase request. So yeah, you can get them to buy your book. Because at first I was like, oh, let me see how we can donate, and the guy was like, well, we also buy, so try to let them buy first before you try to donate. So,
right. Yeah. I've been looking into that too. I have had a couple of interviews with some bookstores, some that are local bookstores as well, and libraries, and I've been kind of all over the place with this, so I've been doing pretty good with my sales.
Good, absolutely, that's great. I'm so happy for that. Also, book clubs, because people, like I said, churches, there's so many things. That's what I love about writing a book. You write it one time and it opens the door for possibilities for
absolutely it does.
Well, we thank you so much, Mrs. Martin, for stopping by.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So check out her book, guys. Forever Love, available on Amazon, Book Baby, Barnes and Noble, or you can email her. We'll have all of your information in the description box. And definitely keep in touch with us. And you're always welcome to come back. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.